The grave was small. That was the cruelest part. Not the mound of violet soil, not the carved stone pressed into the earth of Vethkarn, not the morning chant that Vela sang in a voice that cracked on every third note. No, the cruelest part was how small the grave was. A child's grave. Her child's grave. Vela knelt at the mound with her six-fingered hands pressed flat against the cold soil, her bioluminescent markings completely dark, a thing that only happened to her kind in the deepest grief. Her people, the Kethari, did not weep the way humans wept. They dimmed. They went quiet in the light. Around her, the mourning circle stood. New York, her eldest sister, arms folded across her chest. Hi, the village elder, eyes lowered. What? A clan healer who had failed to save the child, standing at the periphery with guilt carved into every line of his face. Me, Vela's bonded partner, kneeling across from her at the other side of the grave, his markings also dark. They had done everything right. The child, Oren, 7 seasons old, small even for his age, always laughing, had contracted the Veth fever 3 days ago. Fast and merciless. By the second day, he had stopped breathing in the regular pattern. By the third day, Wa had declared the stillness permanent. They had buried him at first light. Dai had arrived in the valley 4 months ago. The humans called it a survey posting, which apparently meant one lone xenobiologist was assigned to spend a Terran year cataloging the biodiversity of a planet that most of the galactic cooperative considered a mild hazard, seismic instability, unpredictable atmosphere, fauna with a fondness for investigating unfamiliar scents. The Kethari had watched the humans' small prefab shelter appear near the ridge with cautious curiosity. They had not interfered. Humans were known quantities to the cooperative: strange, soft-bodied, chronically overconfident, and somehow catastrophically hard to kill. Best to observe first. Dai had won them over slowly. Brought preserved fruit as gifts. Learned 17 words of Kethari. Fixed New York's water collection array without being asked. Did not react with alarm the first time a thorn beast wandered through the village square, and simply watched it pass, with what the Kethari eventually learned to recognize as delight. They had started calling her Joe, the Kethari diminutive for person who does not panic. It was meant affectionately. Dai had been at her shelter when the fever took Oren. She had heard the morning chant begin at dawn and understood what it meant. She had not come to the burial. The Kethari did not question this. Humans had their own grief customs. Perhaps they could not bear to witness. What Dai had actually been doing was running. Not away. Toward her diagnostic equipment, her field med kit, the portable bioscan array she'd hauled across 6 star systems because her supervisor had told her she was overpacking. She had been in the village 3 days ago when Oren had first showed symptoms. She had scanned him, unobtrusively, from a distance, with a handheld device that looked like she was simply checking weather data. The scan had told her something we did not know. The child was not dead from the Veth fever. The Veth fever had triggered a cascading metabolic shutdown, the Kethari equivalent of what humans once called suspended animation. A catastrophic system pause. To every instrument Wa had, to every sense the Kethari possessed, the child red is gone. No light in the markings. No breath. No heat signature above ambient. But Dai's scanner, designed for Terran field biology, calibrated for detecting dormant organisms in extreme cold and low-pressure environments, had caught a signal was instruments could not. A slow, deep cellular oscillation. Barely there. One pulse every 43 seconds. Oren was in there, waiting. The problem was that he was cooling. The metabolic shutdown was consuming the last reserves of his system, and if the oscillation stopped, it would be real. Permanently. And Dai had maybe 8 hours. She had not gone to the burial because she had been at her shelter building something. Joe was working. Vela was still kneeling at the grave when the human appeared at the edge of the mourning circle. Several of the gathered Kethari stepped aside. Not out of fear. They had grown past that, but because Joe's expression was something none of them had seen on a human face before. It was not grief. It was not apology. It was urgency. Joe spoke in broken Kethari, her accent terrible, her grammar a diplomatic incident. The child. Oren. I need the grave. Please. Open. Silence. New York stepped forward. Human. Her voice was flat with warning. This is not your right to touch. I know, Joe said. She switched to Galactic Common because she didn't have the Kethari words for what she needed to say. I know it isn't. I know I have no right. But I ran a bioscan 3 days ago, and your child is not dead the way you think he is dead. His cells are oscillating at 4/10 of a standard Cathari resting rate. He isn't shut down. He is cold, but he is there. I have built a thermal restoration unit from my field kit, and I have 12 minutes to use it before the window closes, and I am asking you. Me rose slowly from across the grave. He looked at Dai for a long moment. His markings remained dark. You are saying he lives. I am saying he might. I am saying I have to try. I am saying I could be wrong, and this could be the worst thing I have ever done to another living being. And I am still asking. Was stepped forward, face tight with professional shame and desperate hope. Show me the scan. Joe showed him. He stared at the oscillation reading for 4 seconds. Open the grave, was said quietly. They opened the grave. What followed was 40 minutes that no one who witnessed them ever fully described to outsiders. Not because it was violent or grotesque, but because it was so profoundly strange. A human crouched in the violet soil of an alien world, pressing a device assembled from weather instruments and a medical warming pad and 3 components whose original purposes no one present understood, against the chest of a small, still child, talking the entire time. Not to the Cathari, not to anyone in particular. To Warren, telling him about Earth, about something called snow, about a dog she had once owned who was afraid of butterflies. Talking and talking and talking while the device hummed, and the gathered Cathari stood in a circle and did not breathe. The oscillation climbed. At minute 26, Oren's bioluminescent markings flickered. At minute 31, he took a breath. At minute 39, he opened his eyes and said, in a small, confused voice, the Cathari word for hungry. Vela did not dim. She blazed, her markings flooding back with light so sudden and intense that several clan members had to shield their eyes. She made a sound that had no translation and gathered her son against her chest and rocked him in the open grave while the morning circle dissolved into chaos and was sat down hard in the soil and covered his face, and me crossed to the human still crouched in the dirt and said, very quietly, Joe. Di looked up. She was shaking. Hands, shoulders, jaw, the whole body shaking with the come down from what she had just done. Joe, me said again. What do your people do when someone gives back the irreplaceable? Di thought about it. Usually, she said, we just say thank you. Me placed both 6-fingered hands over her shaking ones. His markings pulsed once, warm amber, slow, steady. The Cathari color for you are known to us now. For you are ours to keep. Then, he said, thank you. In the small grave, in the violet soil, Oren was explaining to his mother, with great personal offense, that he had been very hungry, actually, for quite some time, and why had no one brought him anything? And for the first time in 3 days, Vela laughed. The Galactic Cooperative's Xenobiology report from Vethkarn, filed 14 months later, contained one unusual footnote. Survey operative Dai exhibited characteristic Deathworld problem-solving under zero-resource constraints. Recommend continued posting. The Cathari have formally designated her a clan member. This appears to be unprecedented. We are still determining what paperwork this requires. The report did not mention that the Cathari had also given her a new name. Not Joe anymore. Something older. Something their language reserved for those who had reached into the dark and pulled someone back. It meant, the one who does not accept the grave.